The Conservative MP for the Isle of Wight, Bob Seely, who is on the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, joins me now. Bob, we're not really being particularly tough when it comes to this crisis, are we? We're talking tough, but we don't seem to be having much effect on the numbers crossing the Channel.
Alex, hi. Are we talking about the numbers crossing the Channel, or are we talking about Russia and Putin? Because they're really two different things.
At first I'm asking you about the numbers crossing the Channel, and we'll get on to what's going on the Polish border as well, where we do appear to have sent 600 troops. We'll move on to that. But what about our current situation and the south coast of England?
Well, it's not great, and we're waiting. I mean, I've got a lot of faith in Priti Patel. I think she's an excellent Home Secretary, and people who are concerned about immigration and control of borders, I think, should recognise that there isn't anyone who's going to be tougher on them. But we are waiting for the immigration bill to pass through, and when it does, hopefully that will give us far more power to act. It is, it's not great, but the government is trying to deal with what is a very complex situation. And it's somewhat different than Australia, because Australia, it was easier, to put it bluntly, to turn people back when it is very difficult to do it in the world's busiest waterway. And we do have humanitarian responsibilities to those people, even if, we are trying to do everything we can to discourage them.
But we are sending troops to Poland, so I hear, to help them with their emerging crisis, which many claim is being essentially created in a hostile act by Belarus.
Well, it's not hostile backed by Belarus, but it's actually Russia's behind all this. But yes, they are entirely different. You are dealing with migrant flows that are somewhat criminalised, etc., and people coming here, washing up in Calais and Dunkirk and then trying to get over. What has happened with the weaponisation of refugees is a specific policy tool. And that actually has been used several times in the past 10 years. It was used by, Russia, probably behind the scenes again. It was used by the Syrian regime and its Russian allies in weaponising migrant flows in Syria. The Russians actually used it themselves against Norway in 2016. And now Belarus is using it as well. So if you like, the connecting element here is it's either Russia using this or Russian allies. So this is undoubtedly one of the 100 or so tools of hybrid war that the Russians have in their playbook. But it is the difference between Calais and the Belarusian border is that the Belarusian border is a specific element of policy and state policy designed to undermine and designed effectively as a weapon of non-traditional conflict.
How much should the UK be getting involved in this particular escalation, given that this isn't happening on our frontier? We've now left the EU and it's surely their problem. And is there a risk that by jumping in and sending troops that this could escalate into a second Cold War, if not worse?
Okay, well, the new Cold War actually started in 2007, but Western governments were desperate not to notice, and we wanted to continue having funny money coming in from Moscow, from China and elsewhere. So we sort of did our best to ignore the new Cold War, which Putin was very clear about because he declared it at the Munich Security Conference in a speech in, I think, February 2007, or whenever the Munich Security Conference takes place. So it's been very clear because the Russians actually signal. They signal what they're going to do because they think that helps justify their behavior. So, unfortunately, it took 7 years for us to realize at the beginning of the Ukraine war that we were dealing with a seriously much more aggressive Russia. But we have continued to, unfortunately, run a rather incoherent policy since then. And even now, we are struggling to be coherent. So we actually need to look at Russian policy across all the spheres where Russia is active and work out to a consistent approach to dealing with Russia. When it comes to your specific question, Alex, about, it's not our border, you're right, it isn't our border, and it isn't, and you're right to say that we are not members of the European Union anymore, but what it is a NATO border, and Poland is a NATO ally. And actually Poland and Britain, despite what people may or may not think about Poland's current government, we have very close links with, and actually we have strong responsibilities too as a fellow member of NATO. So we should be getting involved. We should be sending a significant number of troops to help buttress their borders. And I congratulate the government because it's the right thing to do. But we have also got to understand Putin's tactics, because you can't see Belarus in isolation. Belarusian border the buildup of Russian troops in East Ukraine, and the potential manipulation of a conflict in Bosnia. These are all parts of the same plan about how Putin is trying to undermine NATO because he resents it and hates it, and also how Putin is going to eventually act sooner or later against the Ukraine again.
I mean, Poland has talked about invoking Article 4 of NATO to get all the NATO members gathered around the table because they see this as a massive incursion into their territory. But has America essentially thrown NATO under the bus a bit by being a bit weak on foreign policy when it comes to Russia since the inauguration of Biden?
I would say, if anything, actually, Biden's tougher on Putin and Russia than Trump ever was, because Trump appeared to be deeply compromised. So, and I think the Americans have said some fairly tough things about respecting Ukrainian sovereignty. I'm sorry, it's not America that's the problem here. It's the pathetic weakness of the European Union and European Union states. And very specifically, look, Putin's a gambler. Putin knows that the Germans have got an incoherent energy policy, which is now a security disaster as well as an environmental shocker. The Germans, after Fukushima and with the incoherent German Green movement on Merkel's back, they've shut down all 17 nuclear reactors. They've become increasingly dependent on coal and brown coal, the most polluting form of energy production known to humanity, and they've become increasingly dependent on gas. Where are they getting both of those from? Vladimir Putin. The Germans are paying for Russian rearmament. The Germans are paying for the Russian war machine that is sitting on the edge of Ukraine and maybe kicking off in Belarus and maybe kicking off in Bosnia as well. We're paying for this. The Germans are paying for this. And because Germany is so in hoc to Russia's energy supply, that energy addiction, Putin has probably taken the calculation that the Germans will throw some, if Putin does invade Ukraine or eastern Ukraine or one or two districts, one or two counties, oblasts in eastern Ukraine, the Germans will kick off. They're going to say lots of, be so outraged about it. They'll throw out some diplomats, but fundamentally the Russians will get away with it, Alex. And that's what the Russians are probably calculating right now.